The other big development over the last week is that Chuck Schumer convinced Sherrod Brown to run for the Senate. Sherrod Brown clearly was going to run for something in 26. He has run, he's held many offices in the state. I believe he was the attorney general at one point. But he'd never been governor. And there had been some thought that he might be running for governor rather than Senate. Because the downside of running for the Senate in 26 in Ohio is that this is a special election. It's not for the full 6-year term. This is to finish J.D. Vance's term, which began in 2022, which means if you win in 26, you got to turn around and, like a house race, run again in 28. And did Sherrod Brown really want to run 3? And this was why I thought, and there was some tea leaves indicating if he run for anything, it was going to be governor, because is he really ready to run for the U.S. Senate 6 straight years? Assuming if he does win, right, he's going to turn right around and run again. He's in his 70s. You assume he would, right? I mean, in a presidential year, if he didn't run for reelection, I think Schumer would commit political hara-kiri. Like, that would just be, defeat the purpose of recruiting him. So that was the main reason why I thought Brown would end up going for an office where he could serve for 4 years before having to run another campaign versus getting right back on the hamster wheel, right? He just ran in 24, run again in 26, then have to run again in 28. But at the end of the day, he got in. I think that I think he's both the best candidate Democrats could find, and I think he's going to have a hard time winning. Certainly, he's going to have a better shot to win in a midterm than he is a presidential. As we know, many Trump voters are Trump voters, and when Trump's not on the ballot, they don't show up. I think John Husted, who's the appointed senator, is a very conventional Republican politician, meaning I think he's got some vulnerabilities that Brown can take advantage of. But at the same time, Husted doesn't have to be the only incumbent in the race, right? And I think that Brown has to carry some of that baggage, right? He's been in Washington a long time, right? In some ways, Husted, even though he's the incumbent senator, can say, I just got here. This guy's been here forever, and he can't seem to leave, right? So that's but still, you're Chuck Schumer. You look at the Senate map. You need to put more Republican seats in play. And at the end of the day, he put another seat in play. So he got I'm just tempering expectations here. I think this is. I think Sherrod Brown has always been a terrific political athlete. I've always been really proud of my Sherrod Brown impersonation. Chuck, I roll up my sleeves and I'm ready to go to work. The dignity of work. Sorry, I just wanted to show off it's not often you can bust out a Sherrod Brown impersonation and anybody would care. So this was a moment in time I could do that. But it is going to be we're going to find out once and for all, right? If Brown can't win this race, this will now be 3 straight Senate races where basically Democrats got the perfect candidate they could find, Tim Ryan, then Sherrod Brown back to back. It probably will signal a Democratic retreat from Ohio. Do I think it should? No. No, I think the Democratic Party has a weird way of party building. If they don't think they can get a majority in a state, they walk away, which to me, 40% matters. Right? You should always be engaging and trying to build your 40 to 41, your 41 to 42, but that is not how this party thinks. Republicans think this way, which is why they're always in a better position to be competitive in blue states these days than the way that Democrats are in red states. But it's a philosophical problem, right? The Democrats got so caught up in just trying to win the presidential that they were just sort of data analyticsing and just cared about the 7 states they need to win a presidential, not thinking about being a national party. And if you walk away from Ohio, you don't want to be a national political party. I think walking away from Florida and Texas has been is an indication they're not interested in being a national party. So I think it would be a mistake, but I mean that's what's on the ballot. I do want to. So the question is, what does this do for Ohio governor? What's interesting is how dismissive much of the coverage has been of a candidate that's already in the race, Amy Acton. Amy Acton was Mike DeWine's health advisor during COVID. And so there's been this assumption that she would be, and of course, like anybody who was the face of COVID, became a polarizing figure. Now, it's less polarizing than Fauci, I can tell you that. And in fact, I've seen their campaign has been circulating to reporters and supporters and potential donors some polling between her and the Republican frontrunner Vivek Ramaswamy, and this is why I'm potentially bullish on Ohio, that Democrats might overperform in Ohio, and it is because of Ramaswamy. The polling indicates that he's an extraordinarily polarizing figure already in the state, and he's already a pretty well-defined figure. Working class Ohio, might not be a natural constituency for a guy who's essentially been in the world of private equity, lobbying in Washington, part of Doge, right? That is, I don't know if Doge is a net positive. So he may carry more, this early polling indicates that there's an opportunity to really have him carry, he starts with more baggage than he realizes. He's already well-known, but polarizing. More polarizing than the COVID health director, okay, from Mike DeWine's Mike DeWine's COVID response. And there's definitely a hard ceiling there for Ramaswamy. Okay. He's got the, he's got the high floor, but this is not a candidacy that's going to get more than 52, 53. And that may matter both in the Senate race and it could make him potentially vulnerable to losing. Now there's some Democrats that like to see Tim Ryan, who I just brought up briefly, former congressman who ran for that Senate seat and lost to Vance by 5 points. And the indication being that there's some skepticism that Acton can win because of COVID. Like there's this belief that, and so this is why their campaign, who is Molly Murphy's the chief pollster there. This is one of the best pollsters on the Democratic side. So I take these numbers pretty seriously. I think she's a stronger candidate than the conventional wisdom indicates. And I understand the nervousness Democrats have of just anything COVID, right? They think that just anything COVID is, but in some ways, the electorate is done with COVID too, right? And I don't know if Ramaswamy wants to sit here and have a COVID election, because then it becomes trashing of DeWine, and it could really get complicated on that front. So I will say this polling, they indicated they already had it as a dead heat, 47-46. Now, one thing about Ohio polling is Democrats always have a high floor, right? The path to 45, 46 is really easy in Ohio. The path to 50 is really hard, okay? And so it's not surprising to me that this is already a 1 or 2 point race. Most, if you're fairly well funded, you can get there in Ohio still, because it's still a light red state, not a dark red state. But it's Ramaswamy's negatives and I think whether he has the discipline, what kind of candidate he really can be, that I think is more of an opening here, and it becomes a referendum on him, right? And you can turn it into a referendum on Elon Musk, and for all we know, Elon Musk will start attacking him, since apparently he didn't like him personally during the Doge world. So anyway, I think Ohio. Look, I still think Michigan is the state that is, as Michigan goes, that is the story will be dictating the national narrative of the midterms. But Ohio will be an interesting place to test whether the Republican brand can survive in a bad year, if it indeed ends up being a bad year. Because if Republicans can hold Ohio in a year where Donald Trump's job rating's under 45, remember Sherrod Brown wins re-election in 18. Okay. So, Donald Trump being unpopular was an asset to Brown, and Trump not being on the ballot. So it is, I think, an interesting test here to how competitive is Ohio going to be and will be in the future.